Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The heavy steel door slammed shut with the finality of a coffin lid, severing the thumping bass of the party outside and plunging them into immediate, suffocating silence. 1 second, Kalen was standing in the opulent, champagne-soaked hall of the Thorne estate. The next, he was trapped in a reinforced panic room that smelled of ozone and cold fear, locked in with the one man he had sworn to destroy. The digital timer on the wall didn't count down 7 minutes. It was blank. And the air vents? They weren't whirring. They were sealed. This wasn't a game. It was a tomb. Don't bother screaming. A baritone voice echoed from the shadows, smooth as velvet dragged over broken glass. The walls are soundproof to withstand a ballistic impact. No one can hear you, little spy. Kalen spun around, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Julian Thorne leaned against the far wall, his silhouette cut sharp against the dim emergency lighting. The heir to the city's most ruthless corporate dynasty looked unbothered, his tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, a flute of champagne still dangling loosely from his fingers. He looked like a predator who had finally cornered his favorite meal. You knew, Kalen hissed, his hands balling into fists. You rigged the draw. I merely adjusted the odds, Julian replied, stepping forward. The red emergency light caught the silver of his eyes, making them glow with a terrifying, ethereal hunger. Did you really think you could infiltrate my home, steal my father's ledger, and leave without paying a toll? In this house, Kalen, we don't play games for kisses. We play for blood. 1 hour earlier, the annual solstice gala at the Thorne estate was less of a party and more of a shark tank, where the sharks wore Armani and the water was substituted for vintage Dom Perignon. The ballroom was a cavernous expanse of marble and gold, illuminated by chandeliers that cost more than the collective student debt of Kalen's entire university class. Kalen adjusted the cuffs of his borrowed suit, feeling the uncomfortable itch of the fabric against his wrist. He didn't belong here. He was a scholarship student, a charity case, in the eyes of the elite who populated the room. But he wasn't here for the canapes. He was here for the blackened drive currently sitting in the inner pocket of his jacket, evidence that would prove the Thorne family had been laundering money through the university's scholarship fund, the very fund that kept Kalen fed. Relax, whispered a voice in his earpiece. It was Miles, his tech support and only friend, parked in a van a mile away. You look stiff. Drink something. Blend in. I'm trying, Kalen muttered under his breath, taking a flute from a passing waiter. But the air here is thin. It smells like old money and moral decay. Just stay away from Julian Thorne. If he spots you, the mission is burned. Kalen scanned the room. It was impossible not to spot Julian. The man was a gravitational singularity. He stood near the grand staircase, surrounded by a sycophantic court of debutantes and junior executives. Julian was tall, with hair the color of midnight and features carved from cold porcelain. He was beautiful in the way a switchblade was beautiful, sleek, sharp, and designed to hurt. As if sensing the gaze, Julian's head turned. His eyes, a piercing, unnatural gray, locked onto Kalen across the sea of dancers. A slow, knowing smirk curled Julian's lips. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Kalen froze. He knows. Miles, I'm made, Kalen whispered, turning toward the exit. I'm aborting. Too late, Miles crackled. The exit's just sealed. They're starting the tradition. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the center of the floor where Julian's father, the patriarch Marcus Thorne, stood with a microphone. Welcome, esteemed guests, Marcus boomed. Tonight, we honor the old ways. The solstice is a time of chance, a time of fate. A hush fell over the crowd. Servants rolled out a large, antique wheel, but instead of numbers, the slots were painted with symbols. The rose, the dagger, the crown, the skull. The rules are simple, Marcus continued. The room chooses two. Those two enter the sanctuary. What happens inside remains inside. 7 minutes to resolve your differences. 7 minutes to find heaven. Or hell. It was a perverse tradition, a way for the elite to force alliances or settle vendettas without witnesses. Usually, it was harmless debauchery. Sometimes, people came out bleeding. The algorithm has chosen, Marcus announced, looking at a tablet. The first participant. Mr. Kalen Vance. The spotlight swung violently, blinding Kalen. The crowd gasped. A nobody? Selected for the sanctuary? And his partner. Marcus smiled, a shark baring teeth. My son. Julian Thorne. The room erupted in polite applause, masking the predatory tension in the air. Security guards materialized at Kalen's elbows, their grips firm. He wasn't being invited. He was being escorted. As they dragged him toward the heavy steel doors set into the back wall, Kalen caught Julian's eye. The air was walking toward him, shedding his jacket, loosening his tie. There was no fear in his face, only a dark, simmering anticipation. The sanctuary. Back in the dim red light of the vault, the air was already getting warmer. The ventilation failure wasn't just a lack of air. The climate control had reversed. It was becoming a kiln. Why? Kalen demanded, backing away until his shoulder blades hit the cold steel of the door. Why trap us both? You could have just had your security drag me to the basement and shoot me. Julian took a slow step forward, invading Kalen's personal space. He smelled of sandalwood and danger. Because, Kalen, shooting you is permanent. And frankly, a waste of potential. I wanted to see what you'd do when the walls closed in. You're psychotic. I'm thorough. Julian reached out, his hand bracing against the wall beside Kalen's head. He loomed over him, the height difference forcing Kalen to tilt his head back, exposing the vulnerable line of his throat. You stole the ledger. Hand it over. I don't have it. Kalen lied, though his pulse was visible in his neck. Julian chuckled darkly. You're a terrible liar. Your pupils dilate when you're defensive. It's adorable, really. He moved his hand, not to strike, but to trace the line of Kalen's jaw. His fingers were cool, contrasting with the rising heat of the room. Kalen flinched, swatting the hand away. Don't touch me. Or what? You'll bite. Julian's eyes dropped to Kalen's lips. I'm counting on it. Suddenly, the red light flickered and died, plunging them into absolute darkness. A mechanical grinding noise echoed from the ceiling. That's not part of the game, Julian said, his voice losing its mocking edge. What is it? Kalen asked, panic rising. The secondary locks, Julian murmured. Someone just engaged the purge cycle. Purge cycle. It sucks the oxygen out to suppress fires. Or to eliminate prisoners. Julian grabbed Kalen's wrist, his grip bruising. We have 3 minutes before we pass out. 5 before we're dead. It seems, little spy, that someone wants us both gone. The reality of the situation crashed into Kalen. This wasn't Julian's trap. It was a trap for Julian, and Kalen was collateral damage. Your father? Kalen whispered. No. My brother, Julian growled. He's been waiting for a moment to usurp the succession. Locking the heir in a vault with a thief and suffocating them both? A tragic accident. Kalen's mind raced. He was an enemy of the Thorns, but right now, Julian was his only lifeline. Can we override it? The panel is on the other side of the room. It's biometric. Julian was already moving, dragging Kalen with him through the dark. They reached the control panel. Julian pressed his palm against the scanner. A harsh buzz sounded. Access denied. He locked me out of my own system, Julian cursed, slamming a fist against the metal. The air was getting thin, heavy. Kalen felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. Move, Kalen commanded, shoving Julian aside. What are you doing? It's biometric. It's a localized network, Kalen gasped, pulling a small, modified decoding tool from his belt, the same tool he used to hack the safe earlier. If I can bridge the connection, I can loop the signal. Make it think the door is open, which resets the safety protocol. You're hacking a Thorn security system with a device the size of a pen? Julian sounded skeptical, but he didn't stop him. I hacked your father's private server with a library computer, Kalen retorted, his fingers flying over the device. Hold the light. Do you have a phone? Julian illuminated the screen with his phone. In the pale blue light, Kalen saw Julian's face. The mask of the arrogant prince had slipped. He looked impressed and focused. 1 minute, Julian warned, his breathing becoming shallow. Kalen's vision blurred. The heat was unbearable now. Sweat dripped down his back. I need the encryption key. It's alphanumeric. It changes every 10 seconds, Julian rasped. He moved closer, his chest pressing against Kalen's back. I'll read it to you from the backup display. Julian leaned over Kalen's shoulder, his lips brushing Kalen's ear. Alpha. 9. 0. Delta. Kalen's fingers shook. The proximity was overwhelming. The heat of Julian's body, the scent of him, the imminent death, it was a sensory overload. Focus, Kalen, Julian whispered, his voice dropping an octave. Get us out, and I grant you a boon. Anything you want. I want. Your family. Ruined, Kalen panted, typing the code. Get us out, and I'll help you do it. Kalen froze. What? My brother tried to kill me, Julian said, his voice cold as ice. The throne is tainted. If I survive, I burn it all down. Now finish the code. Kalen keyed in the final sequence. Enter. The screen flashed green. System reboot initiated. A hiss of pressurized air filled the room. Fresh, cool oxygen blasted from the vents. The heavy locks disengaged with a loud thud. They both slumped against the wall, sliding down to the floor, gasping for air. The adrenaline crash was instant. They sat there in the dark, shoulder to shoulder, breathing in sync. The silence stretched, but it wasn't hostile anymore. It was charged. You're good, Julian murmured, turning his head to look at Kalen. I know, Kalen replied, head tipped back against the metal. You saved my life. I saved my own life. You just happened to be attached to it. Julian shifted. Suddenly, he was hovering over Kalen, boxing him in. The threat was gone, replaced by a magnetic pull that was far more dangerous. You have the ledger, Julian stated. It wasn't a question. I do. Keep it. Kalen's eyes widened. Why? Because, Julian leaned down, his face inches from Kalen's. My brother thinks we're dead. When we walk out that door, the war starts. And I need a partner who isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. I need someone who hates this world as much as I do. I hate you, Kalen whispered, though his hand had unconsciously come up to rest on Julian's chest, clutching the lapel of his jacket. Do you? Julian smirked. Then why is your heart racing? Fear, Kalen lied. Adrenaline, Julian corrected. And desire. Julian closed the distance. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was a collision, a claiming. It tasted of champagne and desperation. Julian's mouth was demanding, his tongue sweeping into Kalen's mouth with the same arrogance he ruled his empire. Kalen should have pushed him away. He should have used his knee to incapacitate him. But he didn't. He grabbed Julian's hair, pulling him closer, matching his intensity. For months, they had circled each other, predator and prey, spy and target. Now, the lines were blurred. Julian groaned low in his throat, his hands sliding down to grip Kalen's waist, pulling their bodies flush together. The heat of the room was nothing compared to the fire igniting between them. 7 minutes are up, Kalen gasped, breaking the kiss, his lips swollen. Julian rested his forehead against Kalen's. The game is over, Kalen. Reality starts now. Julian stood up, offering a hand to Kalen. Kalen looked at the hand of the enemy, and then up at Julian's face. The silver eyes weren't mocking anymore. They were promising retribution on the world outside. Kalen took his hand. Julian pulled him up, but didn't let go. He adjusted Kalen's tie, smoothing the fabric with possessive care. When that door opens, Julian said, his voice hard, you stay behind me. My brother will have armed guards waiting for the bodies. I can fight, Kalen said. I know. Julian smiled, a terrifying expression that promised violence. But tonight, you're not the spy. You're mine. And no one touches what is mine. Julian hit the door release. The steel groaned and swung open. Bright light flooded the vault. The music had stopped. The party guests were staring, hushed. Standing near the front was Julian's brother, a look of triumphant sorrow plastered on his face. A look that shattered into pure horror as Julian stepped out, alive, with Kalen at his side. Julian straightened his cuffs, his gaze sweeping over the terrified crowd, finally landing on his brother. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply smiled, cold and lethal. Sorry to disappoint, Julian's voice carried through the silent hall. But it seems heaven wasn't ready for us. And hell? Hell is afraid we'll take over. He pulled Kalen flush against his side, his arm heavy and protective around Kalen's shoulders. The game has changed, Julian announced. Run. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, by showing him they both had the same fangs. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control and burn the world for Kalen, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a sworn enemy if they were the only thing keeping you alive? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Julian Thorne, tall, black hair, sharp jawline, silver eyes, wearing unbuttoned tuxedo, arrogant yet protective expression, leaning over man 2. Hand on wall. Man 2. Kalen Vance, slightly shorter, brown hair, messy, wearing cheap suit, flushed face, defiant but breathless expression, pinned against metal wall. Background is inside a high-tech metallic vault, dim. Red emergency lighting, steam or haze in air, claustrophobic atmosphere, intense eye contact, sexual tension, cinematic lighting, sharp focus, intricate details.